Have you ever wondered why some women are drawn to men older than themselves? Not just for experience, but for something deeper, something unspoken. Pause. What if I told you that when she looks at him, she isn't asking for promises, she's testing the very core of who he is? Slight pause, voice softens, she's listening to more than words, watching more than actions, and waiting to see if he can hold her world without breaking. Stay with me, because what she tests will reveal the hidden truths about connection, intimacy, and the kind of love that lasts. When she looks at him, she isn't counting the years he has walked on this earth, nor is she simply noticing the lines that mark his face. What draws her attention, what pulls her closer in those quiet, almost imperceptible moments, is the calm that surrounds him. It is not a loud kind of strength, it is a stillness, a quiet gravity that seems to hold the world together. Life has taught her to recognize the difference between chaos masquerading as charm and the steady pulse of someone who has seen storms and stood through them without losing himself. She is drawn to a man who doesn't flinch at life's unpredictability, who doesn't collapse under the weight of frustration or disappointment. His presence is measured, deliberate, like the soft yet persistent rhythm of a drum that grounds everything else. In his calm, she senses a promise, not one made with words, but one lived out silently in the spaces between them. She watches him in moments of tension, the subtle test he may never know he is under. Perhaps it is the way he answers a phone call that brings bad news, or how he responds when someone close to him expresses anger or sorrow. Does he snap, lash out, retreat into impatience, or does he breathe, listening before speaking, grounding himself before reacting? There is a rhythm to life that cannot be rushed, and she has learned to notice whether he moves with the music of it or against it. Emotional stability is not something you can fake. It reveals itself in the minutiae, in the ordinary days that are not lit by romance or drama. It is in the way he handles spilled coffee, in the way he sits in silence without needing to fill it, in the way he navigates mistakes, his own or others. Every action, no matter how small, is a whisper of his inner world, and she hears it clearly. She remembers the men who came before, men whose voices quivered when life demanded calm, men whose confidence dissolved when faced with discomfort. She remembers the exhaustion of having to hold the space for someone else's instability, the weight of being the anchor while the person she admired drifted like a leaf in the wind. Those experiences have sharpened her perception. She no longer confuses intensity with strength. She seeks the kind of man who, even in the heat of disagreement, can remain grounded enough to return to her, to meet her eyes with understanding rather than fear or irritation. Emotional stability is not a shield against the world. It is the quiet courage to stay present in it, to carry the weight of both joy and disappointment without losing oneself. And in this, she is testing him, though perhaps not consciously. She's noticing how he navigates the ordinary pressures, the subtle upsets, the moments that do not demand applause but reveal true character. She watches whether he has learned to tolerate uncertainty, to sit with discomfort, to be patient with life's unfolding rather than insisting it conform to his desire. She's drawn not to perfection but to mastery, the mastery of self, the ability to meet life fully without being undone by it. When she senses that steadiness, she feels a rare kind of trust stir in her chest, a recognition that perhaps here is someone who can hold both her intensity and her fragility without fear, without need to dominate, without retreat. The quiet strength of emotional stability becomes the foundation upon which deeper connection can grow, a prelude to intimacy that is measured not in passion alone, but in the grace with which two souls can exist together in the same world. She leans in, not because the words are loud or urgent, but because the spaces between the words hold a language of their own. She is listening, always listening, and yet she tests him not by what he says, but by what he hears. Does he notice the tremor in her voice, the hesitation in her gestures, the unspoken weight behind her laughter? She is drawn to a man who can listen not only to the syllables that escape her lips, but to the silences that linger afterward, the pauses where vulnerability hides. She watches how he receives her truths, the small and the immense alike. Can he sit with her fear without offering immediate solutions, without turning the mirror back on himself? Can he absorb her world without feeling compelled to fix it, to redirect it, to mold it into something safer and easier? Listening is a subtle art, a test of both patience and courage, and she notices the difference between someone who hears and someone who truly listens. There have been those before him, men who heard only what they wanted, who nodded in polite agreement while their minds raced elsewhere, who mistook politeness for presence. She remembers the emptiness that followed, the ache of speaking truths into an abyss, the slow erosion of connection when she realized that her words were being received but never understood. That is why she tests him, why she watches his attention like a hawk on a silent morning. She wants to see whether he is capable of holding her whole, the complexities and contradictions, the layers of thought and emotion that cannot be untangled in a single conversation. True listening, she knows, is an act of intimacy. It requires a willingness to inhabit another person's world without judgment, a bravery to confront feelings that are uncomfortable or unfamiliar. He does not need to solve her, does not need to analyze or deconstruct her. She is not seeking a therapist nor a critic. She is searching for the rare presence of someone who can sit beside her in her own chaos, who can witness her without fear, without withdrawal, without the urgent need to replace her experience with his own narrative. She notices how he responds when she falters, when her thoughts spill out in jagged fragments, when her heart refuses to be contained neatly. Does he interrupt? Does he deflect? Or does he lean closer, breathing with her, allowing her to exist fully and unapologetically in that moment? The depth of his listening is a quiet test, more revealing than words, more profound than any overt declaration. In the rhythm of ordinary days, she observes the small demonstrations of attention, the way he remembers what she said hours or days ago, the way he asks again, not out of obligation, but out of genuine curiosity and care. She watches whether he acknowledges her perspective even when it differs from his own, whether he can honor her emotional truth without trying to bend it to his liking. There is a grace in this, a subtle power, a strength that is measured not in dominance but in receptivity. She is drawn to this, for it is here that trust begins, where the foundation of true connection is laid. A man who can listen deeply is not just hearing words, he is accepting a part of her soul, recognizing her inner landscape, and in doing so, he becomes a mirror in which she can see herself more clearly, not altered or diminished, but reflected with understanding and care. And in this reflection, she finds the quiet pulse of hope. The possibility that here is someone who will meet her where she is, without fear, without judgment, and with the patience to understand her not as she appears in fragments, but as a whole being deserving of attention, presence, and respect. She notices him not in the moments of spectacle, not when the room is bright and full of admiration, but in the quiet, unremarkable spaces where no one is watching. Charm is easy, a currency that flows freely with a smile, a clever turn of phrase, a flirtatious glance. She has seen it before. Men who can illuminate a room yet leave shadows behind, whose words sparkle while their actions falter, whose promises are fleeting as sunlight on water. She has learned that charm can open doors, but it cannot keep them open. What she tests is something deeper, something that cannot be faked, cannot be performed, integrity. She is looking for the alignment of his words and his actions, the invisible thread that ties intention to truth, the quiet assurance that who he is in private mirrors who he is in public. In the flow of ordinary life, integrity reveals itself in small but telling moments. Does he return the things he borrows, not because she asks, but because it is the right thing to do? Does he honor his commitments, even when the world offers easier shortcuts, even when no applause is given? She observes how he treats strangers, those who hold no power over him, those whose presence brings him no advantage. It is here, in these subtle acts, that she reads the measure of his character, the strength of his inner compass. Integrity is not loud, it is not performative. It is the quiet courage to be consistent, to be faithful to one's values, even when no one is watching, even when it costs him comfort or immediate gratification. She has loved men before who dazzled with words but stumbled with deeds. She remembers the heartbreak of discovering that the grand promises, the eloquent declarations, the flattering reassurances were fragile veneers over inconsistency, and so she tests him in silence, in observation, in the subtle weighing of his choices. Can he admit mistakes without excuse, without defensiveness? Can he hold himself accountable in ways that are humble yet resolute? She watches the rhythm of his daily life, the flow of his work, the gestures he makes when no one else is observant. And in these she discerns the authenticity of the man before her. Charm can be rehearsed to perfection. Integrity cannot. It is born of experience, of reflection, of the courage to face oneself and the world without compromise. She is not seeking perfection, she is seeking coherence. A man whose words are mirrors to his actions carries a quiet authority that draws her closer, not through spectacle but through trust. There is a magnetism in this, an almost invisible force that calls to the parts of her that crave safety, reliability, and emotional honesty. It is not a test of ego or dominance, it is a test of character, and she senses it intuitively. Does he keep his word when it is inconvenient? Does he respect the boundaries he sets and those that she sets? Does he navigate moral gray areas with a compass tuned to integrity rather than convenience? These are the moments that reveal who he truly is, the depth of his maturity, the steadiness of his heart, and in witnessing this alignment, she finds a rare kind of reassurance. A man who lives with integrity does not need to persuade, to manipulate, or to perform. He simply is, and in his being he offers her a sanctuary of trust, a space where she can lower her defenses, where connection is not a gamble but a quiet unfolding of honesty and respect. The power of charm may fade with time, but integrity endures, becoming the foundation upon which love, intimacy, and emotional safety can grow unshaken, a steady current beneath the surface of shared life. She watches him not in moments of perfection, not when life is convenient or the spotlight is on, but in the quiet, fragile spaces where humanity shows itself without pretense. Vulnerability is the language of truth, but it is a language few can speak with grace. She notices how he carries his own uncertainties, the unspoken fears, the moments of doubt that he does not broadcast to the world, but allows to exist quietly within himself. There is courage in that, a courage she has learned to recognize over time. She tests whether he can hold his imperfections without turning them into armor, whether he can allow himself to be seen, not as a flawless figure to admire, but as a whole human being, complete with fragility, contradictions, and scars. The subtlety of vulnerability is not about exposing everything at once. It is about showing enough for another to know the depth of one's heart without overwhelming them, about the delicate balance of openness and restraint, honesty and protection. She remembers the men who could not bear the weight of their own vulnerability, who disguised fear as arrogance, uncertainty as control. She remembers the loneliness of loving someone who could not admit their wounds, whose walls were higher than mountains, and whose defenses were impenetrable. It taught her that true strength is not found in the absence of fear, but in the willingness to face it, to embrace it, and to allow it to shape the way one moves through the world. She tests him not through grand gestures or overt challenges, but in the subtle moments, the way he admits when he is wrong, the way he expresses hesitation, the way he allows tenderness to surface without embarrassment. These small acts of courage tell her more than any declaration ever could. Vulnerability, when genuine, is magnetic, drawing her closer not through spectacle, but through the resonance of authenticity. She notices how he responds when life unfolds unpredictably, when plans fail, when disappointment arrives uninvited. Does he collapse, retreating into stoicism or defensiveness, or does he breathe, acknowledge the weight of the moment and face it with honesty? Vulnerability is tested not in comfort, but in adversity, and she watches how he navigates the ordeal. Nary trials of existence. There is a depth to his patience, a steadiness to his empathy, a quiet bravery in admitting that he does not have all the answers. In these moments, she measures not just his strength, but the quality of his heart, the capacity to hold space for both himself and for her. She recognizes that to embrace vulnerability is also to invite connection, to signal that intimacy is possible, that walls can be lowered without fear of collapse. She tests whether he can sit with her emotions without needing to escape, whether he can witness her fears and desires without judgment or ridicule. There is a profound elegance in the man who can carry vulnerability like a lantern, illuminating the hidden corners of their shared emotional world without forcing exposure or demand. She is drawn not to flamboyant displays of feeling, but to the steady, quiet courage that allows both of them to exist fully, honestly, and without pretense. In this delicate dance, she senses whether connection can deepen, whether trust can be built on more than charm or words. Vulnerability is the doorway to intimacy, and she watches carefully to see if he has the courage to approach it without fear, without haste, without the need to dominate or control. The subtlety of vulnerability is not a test of weakness, but a measure of emotional intelligence, strength, and readiness for authentic relational depth. And when he meets her there with honesty and presence, she feels the rare pulse of understanding, a resonance that whispers that here is someone who can hold both his own truth and hers without breaking, someone capable of intimacy that is both profound and enduring. She observes him not in the moments of triumph or spectacle, but in the quiet stretches of life that demand nothing but steadiness. Patience is rarely tested in grandeur. It is revealed in the ordinary, in the mundane, in the spaces where time stretches and expectations falter. She watches how he handles waiting, not with irritation, not with hurried attempts to force resolution, but with a calm that carries an unspoken understanding that some things unfold only when they are ready. There is a rhythm to life that cannot be rushed, a pulse that beats beyond control, and she is drawn to the man who can move with it rather than against it. Patience is more than endurance. It is an active choice to honor the flow of life and the emotional landscapes of others. She has loved men before who could not wait, who could not pause, whose impulses always dictated the pace of connection. She remembers the exhaustion of being rushed, the quiet tension of having to match someone else's hurry, the ache of feeling that moments of vulnerability, of tenderness, of understanding were never allowed to breathe. She tests him gently, through observation rather than confrontation. How does he respond when plans take longer than expected? How does he behave when life unfolds unpredictably, when disappointment arrives like an uninvited guest? Patience is revealed not in what he says, but in how he moves through these small trials, in the steadiness of his gaze, the calm cadence of his presence, the absence of unnecessary pressure. In ordinary life, patience manifests in gestures too subtle to announce. The quiet listening when she struggles to articulate her feelings, the willingness to let silence exist without filling it with noise, the choice to respect her pace rather than impose his own. She watches whether he can hold a space that allows her to arrive in her own time, to express herself fully, to exist without hurry. In these seemingly minor acts, she measures the capacity of his heart, the depth of his self-control, the maturity of his emotional intelligence. Patience is not passive, it is active presence. An understanding that life and love cannot be coerced into shape, that some truths emerge only when one waits with grace and attentiveness. She notices how he treats moments of uncertainty, the pauses that test composure, the intervals between desire and fulfillment. Does he demand answers, seek certainty, or forced decisions? Or does he allow room for life's natural unfolding, embracing ambiguity without fear, supporting her without need to dominate? She recognizes that a patient man is not one who avoids action, but one who knows when to act and when to hold, who understands that the timing of intimacy, trust, and emotional connection cannot be hurried. There is a rare elegance in this, a subtle magnetism that draws her closer, for it signals a man capable of bearing not only his own complexities but hers as well, without being overwhelmed or reactive. Patience is also measured in consistency, in the quiet demonstration of reliability over time. She watches whether he can remain steady when days blur together, when life is ordinary and unremarkable, when excitement has faded, but connection remains. The man who embodies patience shows her that love and understanding are cultivated gradually, that depth cannot be rushed, and that intimacy grows through attention, care, and respect for time. It is here, in these unassuming moments, that trust is born, that hope for connection takes root, that she feels the rare comfort of knowing she is seen, valued, and allowed the space to be herself fully. She studies him not just in moments of intimacy or fleeting excitement, but in the patterns of his life, the subtle choices that reveal who he truly is and what he stands for. Vision and values are not declared in grand statements. They are lived quietly, consistently in the way he treats those around him, the priorities he holds, and the principles he refuses to compromise. She watches whether his life carries a coherence, a direction that resonates with the unspoken standards she carries herself. There is an invisible thread that weaves trust, respect, and understanding together, and she is drawn to the man whose path, his purpose, and his moral compass align not just with his ambitions, but with the essence of what she believes is right and meaningful. She tests him subtly, observing whether he navigates life in a way that harmonizes with hers, whether his core values can hold space for hers without conflict or dismissal. She has loved before, and in those loves she learned the quiet heartbreak of misalignment. A man's words may have been seductive, his promises intoxicating, yet if his priorities diverged from hers, if his principles faltered when tested by circumstance, the connection would always strain under the weight of hidden dissonance. She now watches the gestures and choices that reveal the alignment or misalignment of vision, the causes he champions, the consistency of his actions, the respect he shows for boundaries and ethics, the manner in which he invests his time and attention. These small but persistent indicators are louder than any declaration of love, louder than any charming sentiment, because they reveal the architecture of his inner world, and only in that architecture can true compatibility be discerned. She notices how he approaches challenges that test his character. Does he bend his values for convenience or comfort? Or does he hold firm, guided by principles that do not waver in the face of temptation or pressure? She observes whether his ambitions carry the weight of purpose beyond self-interest, whether his desires for growth, love, and life reflect integrity and thoughtfulness. In these observations, she measures whether their paths are capable of moving together, whether their lives can intersect without eroding each other, whether shared values can create a foundation strong enough to sustain intimacy, commitment, and mutual respect. Alignment is not about perfection. It is about harmony, the quiet understanding that their life visions can coexist without constant compromise or silent resentment. In moments of decision, in ordinary choices that go unnoticed by others, she discerns whether his vision resonates with hers. She watches whether he respects not only his own autonomy but hers as well, whether he honors her perspective even when it diverges from his, whether he carries empathy as a principle rather than as an occasional gesture. The alignment of vision and values is tested not in dramatic declarations, but in the rhythm of daily living, in the choices made when no one is looking, in the subtle but persistent demonstration of character, It is here in these small truths that she sees whether the connection has the potential to grow beyond attraction into depth, beyond desire into trust, beyond affection into shared life. She senses that when vision and values align, there is a rare kind of security and freedom. It is a freedom born not of convenience, but of authenticity. It is the feeling that two people can walk together without friction, that they can honor each other's truths while building something meaningful. That intimacy is not a gamble, but a shared journey of coherence and purpose. She tests him with her awareness, with her quiet observation, and in his alignment she measures the possibility of a future that is not only passionate but principled, not only tender but enduring, and not only desired but deeply understood. And so we come to understand that when a woman is drawn to an older man, her tests are never about trivial curiosities or fleeting whims. They are reflections of the depth she seeks, the authenticity she values, and the emotional courage she hopes to find mirrored in another. She watches not for charm alone, not for empty words, but for the quiet strength that steadies, the listening that honors, the integrity that guides, the vulnerability that invites closeness, the patience that nurtures, and the alignment that sustains. These are not tests of weakness or manipulation. They are the markers of true connection, the unspoken measures of whether love, trust, and intimacy can grow in fertile soil. When he embodies these qualities, he becomes more than a partner. He becomes a sanctuary, a steady presence in a world of uncertainty, a companion who honors both her heart and his own. And when this alignment occurs, there is a rare and profound magic, a connection that is resilient, tender, and enduring, built not on superficial attraction, but on the shared understanding of life, love, and human depth. Remember this: love that is tested and found steady is not fragile. It is not fleeting. It is a force that carries the weight of life's challenges with grace, a bond that deepens with honesty, presence, and emotional courage. These are the truths she looks for, the ones that will sustain her heart and his, the invisible threads that weave lives together with trust, respect, and the quiet joy of being truly known. So embrace these lessons, hold them close, and let them guide your journey in love, in connection, and in understanding. Because when we recognize what is real, what is steady, and what is worthy, we step into a relationship not of convenience, but of conscious choice, depth, and authenticity. Good luck, subscribe, and thank you for being here, for choosing to witness, to learn, and to grow alongside the truths that matter most.